all the games I used to play in my younger, wilder days. The game of clubs and tees had never crossed my mind.
Welcome in to another episode of the Turn Fantasy Golf Pod. I am Joe Nicely. As you can tell, I'm not the normal host. Andrew Putters is off this week. Something we talked about, we kind of set some goals each year coming into the year. And one thing we talked about this year was we want to get some fresh voices on here for you guys. So we're going to try to do that throughout the year. And who we have on this week, I'm very excited to introduce you guys to Eric Darbo of SweetSpotDFS, one of the sharpest analytical minds out there. So hope you guys will check his stuff out. Eric, thanks for joining us, man. Really glad to have you. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Joe. I was actually pretty surprised, and I really appreciate the offer today. So thank you for having me on. A little bit about me. Okay. Started the YouTube game maybe 3 years ago. I think it's about 3 years ago. And I mean, I won't lie. I think most of us probably fell under this somehow. And, us that are podcasting, the great Pat Mayo, the godfather of DFS. I saw him doing it and absolutely loved how he was able to entertain and stuff like that. But I won't lie. I feel like, I'm not going to step on any toes, but I also didn't like a lot of the things he did. So I wanted to create my own version, and slowly trying to get that way. And of course, I just have an analytical mind. So the entertainment value was kind of lacking where I wanted more stats and stuff like that. So I kind of started like a small model and then kind of grew it into what I call the bucket system. So if you're unfamiliar with that, it's just I analyze the top 10 of every single tournament and try to determine what are, some of the good plays. It's kind of a trends analysis tool, but so far this year, and even going all the way back to the PGA Championship, most of my buckets that I project, I have like a 93% success rate of projecting like the category of player that you want. Now it is kind of, open in a way, but I'm in all honesty, Joe, I'm trying to crack a code, and I know that can be foolish, but I feel like, a little bit of this as trial and error that I'm doing. Like you wouldn't really use this trends analysis on really any kind of analytical anything in your business, but like for me, it's been fun. Like to me, this is my fun. Some people are like, oh, who cares about being right? Well, my pursuit of being right is my way of having fun. So that's my little bit of being in the DFS world. Personal life, I was in the golf industry for 14 years. I was trying to be a golf pro for a while, and it just doesn't pay a lot of money. So I stopped being in the golf industry and having to deal with customers day to day. Golf industry might be one of the worst industries to have to tailor to. So love giving lessons, love playing, but just don't like the business aspect of it. So that's a little bit about me.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. It's a really, really cool collision of kind of the golf pro side of things and the analytical side of things. So it makes a ton of sense. Thanks for sharing that. Really appreciate it. I love a lot of your, a lot of your videos are just almost pure instructional stuff, which I really like. Does projected ownership matter is a really cool video that I checked out. You also do some things where you explained, strokes gained, which I really like. So definitely want to encourage everybody listening to go check out Eric's YouTube channel, SweetSpotDFS. There's some really awesome stuff over there. We're going to look back a little bit before we look forward. Look back at the Farmers. Luke List took it down, beat Will Zalatoris in a playoff. Two kind of similar players. Definitely some parallels between those two. Both struggle putting, both excellent from tee to green. Will Zalatoris, man, gained over 12 strokes tee to green. We'll talk about him a little bit this week. He's in the field, but lost, I think, 1.3 strokes putting. So just kind of a sick output. I was all in there. He was my one and done last week. Wrote him up in my Core 4 article over at Rotoballer. So really loved Willie Z. Disappointed that he didn't get the win, but we also like Luke List on this show. Talk about him a lot. I think anyone that deals with plays a lot of DFS is probably pretty familiar with Luke List. Gonna pop in a lot of statistical models. He's so good tee to green, but finally had a decent putting week and got the first win of his career. What do you think about the Farmers, Eric? Any takeaways? Did you get a chance to watch much of it? Give me your thoughts on it, man.
Absolutely. So this weekend was actually the first weekend I was able to celebrate Christmas with my family. So we left Saturday morning. So I just didn't see Saturday's round, but Wednesday through Friday, it kind of played out the way I thought it would. I was pretty, in all honesty, like, I know a lot of people were talking about Luke List. Now, Luke List didn't really pop in my model, which is weird. Like, I probably need to go back and look at it. But, you know, maybe those POA greens are kind of a good equalizer when it comes to some of the putting. I'm glad Luke List got his first victory. I mean, he was due, right? He's been due for a very long time. I was kind of concerned when he got vertigo. Do you remember him getting vertigo last year?
I don't remember that actually. I knew there was a down cycle for him last year. Wasn't aware of the vertigo though, so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I can't remember which alternate event it was, whether it was Puerto Rico or Corrales or something like that. But I think he had to withdraw because of vertigo. And Jason Day had vertigo, or something similar to that, and that knocked Jason Day out for a while, like his vertigo problem. Of course, he also has the bad back, but I was always concerned about Luke List. Now, all the people I know who have vertigo have had it for a really long time. He doesn't seem, I think he's been able to manage it. Like, since he's had vertigo, like, he's just been a better golfer. So maybe the dizzies made him, be able to putt well. It's just, it is remarkable, because I've kind of stayed away from him with kind of knowing that, because that stuff can just come up at any point in time. So the fact that, he's been playing some really good golf recently. And so, you could forecast him winning. And Willie Z not being, we hadn't seen him in a while. I think we saw him at, was it the American Express? Was that the first one?
Yeah, we saw him at the Amex. He played well there.
Yeah.
Not very popular. I think kind of reminded folks how good of a player he is at the Amex. So I think his ownership ticked up a little bit last week. I was there just because I felt from tee to green he was really going to pop at Torrey. We'd seen him play well there before. Had seen List play there before, well before there too, actually. So, not a huge surprise. Maybe a surprise that List, was able to hang in there and get the win, but I definitely don't think it was a surprise that he played well. Going back to Willie Z, man, I'm going to ask you, I don't know, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot at all, but, what is his win equity like looking forward? We know how good he is tee to green. But how often, man, are guys winning tournaments losing strokes or break even strokes in putting? What do you think about Zalatoris' chances to kind of start piling up some wins? We know he's an elite talent, but that putter certainly is going to be an issue. Proved to be one this past week. So what are your thoughts on Willie Z going forward?
I like Willie Z. So I'm going to do another strokes game pod sometime in the near future. Where I want to highlight some of the strokes gain stats that people just don't understand that well when it comes to like negatively judging people or even positively judging people. So the fact that Willie Z has bad putting stats mostly because he's missing a lot of 8 to 10 footers. I would imagine. I don't have the stats in front of me, but where it's 50% make percentage on tour around that 8-foot mark, he's not making 50% of his putts. He's making like 40, and he's probably missing more 5-foot putts than most people are. So in a way, you can negatively judge him saying, well, if you can't make a 5-footer, you're never going to win a tournament. But then his ball striking, his iron play is so good that his proximity. So like I always tell people, if you see a large gain in positive approach, if the difference of his strokes gain putting is at least better than 0, that means he's got, a good chance to win a tournament. So like if he's positive, 10 shot strokes gained approach, he would have to be minus 10 strokes gained putting to like, really fail. And that's not a perfect, math problem or anything like that. And he's not going to hit everything to 5 feet all the time. But whereas you'd see like a Jordan Spieth knocking putts in from 28 feet almost regularly, his putting stats are going to look really good. Now, does that make him a better putter than Will Zalatoris? By stats wise, no, but we all know Jordan Spieth is a better putter than Willie Z. I mean, Willie Z's technique is really, I don't know, man, it's bad. Like I could go on and on and on about this, but his win equity, I absolutely love. Like Willie Z is going to get a victory short, like very soon.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think he's going to win. Kind of reminds me a little bit of a Decky, just to kind of throw a comp guy out there, just so good from tee to green, but that putter's going to come and go. But I think if, we see him kind of break even putting, he's going to win some tournaments for sure.
I bet you he wins a tournament minus putting, and it might be slightly, it might be like minus 3, 0.38 might be minus 1, but it might be minus, honestly.
Yeah. We've seen it happen before.
Right.
So, I mean, it's, it is possible. And then there's always the, the chance that he just has a really great putting week. Like we seen from List, this week, like we seen from Hideki at Sony. It's certainly possible these great ball strikers can go out there and just have a good putting week. So, really talented guy. We'll talk about him a little bit more here in a minute, but, let's kind of turn our attention to, what we got in front of us this week, Eric, the, AT&T Pebble Beach ProAm. Beautiful golf course, great setting. I don't know that everyone loves the format. We're kind of going back to what we saw a couple weeks ago with the Amex 3-course rotation this week, 54-hole cut. 2 of the courses don't have shot tracker. Very long rounds with kind of these celebrity playing partners out there. So it's not a tournament that's for everybody. I personally kind of wish we could just see these guys play Pebble Beach every year. And leave all this other stuff off, but we know how things are on the PGA Tour. So, going to play 3 courses this week. Pebble Beach Golf Links. That one's a par 72 coming in 6,816 yards. Spyglass Hill, also a par 72, 7,035 yards on the card this week. And then Monterey Peninsula, par 71. That one's coming in at 6,958. This field will play 1 round each on all 3 of those, with the final round being held at Pebble. You got any thoughts on these golf courses, Eric? What are you looking for statistically? What are you thinking off the top of your head on the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am?
Well, when it comes to the rotation, I'm going to be there with a lot of people. It is one of those things that it stinks. We can't see anything in those other 2 golf courses. We know one of them is supposed to be easier than all of them. I, for whatever reason, can't think off the top of my head. I think it's Spyglass is the easier one.
Well, Monterey. Monterey's
Monterey?
Gonna play. Yeah, it's going to play quite a bit easier than the other 2.
Okay.
Yeah, Spyglass. Spyglass can actually, depending on the weather, that's another thing we kind of have to guess on is the weather conditions. Very important on these courses. It's coastal, very exposed. So Monterey is going to play the easiest. Spyglass, depending on kind of the day and the weather, can play tougher than Pebble at times. But Monterey is going to be by far the easiest of the 3 this week.
Okay. Yeah, and I kind of looked at a weather forecast Monday. Obviously, anything can change between now and Thursday, but it's calm. It's like 61 degrees, so it's not warm, not for these guys. And it's like 5 to 10 miles an hour. That's what's being forecasted. I think even Friday doesn't even have wind on there, just says variable light wind. So it seems like it's going to be a still day, which would increase scoring conditions. But because it's kind of cold, I don't know. I think we're probably going to have a normal tournament, minus 20, minus 19, somewhere in that vicinity. For stats that I look into now, whenever I'm looking at stats, I really don't like, I've heard a lot of things so far, like, load up on your short hitters this week because the courses are really short. Your yards per par are very small, but like, club head speed is just the max potential a player can have. So they're also going to be, clubbing down on a lot of their tee shots. They're still going to have more potential to do well. So I'm not looking to just pick the short hitters. Everyone is more in play, but I think for me, I'm more of a proponent of kind of mixing and matching. So I like to do, try to find someone with all positive stats all the way across, maybe one or two of them. And then maybe a couple that are positive off the tee, positive putting, and negative around the green. The bucket system, how I do things, it's a mix and match. So I will be playing someone with negative off the tee stats and positive putting, and I'll also be playing someone with positive off the tee and negative putting. So I won't lie, Joe. It can be complicating if I try to talk about it, but I do not look at specific stats and try to, peg certain players based off of, kind of the raw stats. But I think course history is probably one of the big, or tournament event history, whatever you want to call it. I think that's probably the biggest thing to look at this year. There's a fun trend that I'll bring up a little bit later that I would concur with. But I don't know if we're there yet.
Okay. Well, we'll get there. We'll get there. Right. I do like the, you touched on course history. I do like that this week. I feel like course history is more important some weeks versus others. And Pebble, I want a guy with some experience. This is certainly a unique format, unique golf course. I mean, not everybody can handle, playing with these amateurs for 6, 7, 8 hour rounds. So that's kind of I feel like that's kind of a point unto itself this week. So I'm going to look for guys that have had success here. Like what you said about the shorter hitters, I don't know that I'm necessarily bumping them up this week, but I think it's just more so that we can consider them this week, whereas some weeks we can't. So I'm definitely more willing to consider a short hitter this week versus a lot of the tracks. We do this show every week, and there's maybe half dozen times a year where we say distance has very little relevance. I would certainly consider this event to be one of those. I think you can play a shorter hitter this week without much thought. But that said, man, we kind of touched on the course. Let's dive in the DraftKings slate.
Hey, one thing, can I add something really quick?
Sure.
Because it's going to go off of your course history where you want someone that has course history here. So I'll go over the trend that I was going to hold on.
Okay.
I'm going to first talk about yours. So people who've never played this event have a pretty poor history of finishing inside the top 10. And we have 70 golfers in that, I call them buckets, in that bucket this year. On average, we have about 33. So we have way more that don't have any event history at this event. With everything that I calculate and stuff like that with my projections, it's 1 to 2 golfers I project to be inside the top 10. What I'll say is like the success rate of the bucket system is like it's over 90%. So I feel very confident in what you just said. I want people who've played this event before. Now, I'm not going to say nay to, everybody who hasn't had. There's some really good rookies that we'll probably talk about. But yes, I totally agree with you that I want people with course history. Now, the trend that's been going around that actually has a little bit of backing is like 10 of the last 13 winners has had a top 20 at this event the year before. And I track that with the bucket system. I look at last year finishes. So I'm projecting 4 to 6 golfers in that bucket this year to finish inside the top 10. That's insane. I've never had a projection that high. You know what? I'm going to take that back, Joe. There is something wrong with my formulas. So we'll scrap that. I have no idea. I'm showing 126 golfers in that bucket. So we'll scrap that right now. That's not true. We have like 17 of them. I'll update it as we go.
I think we're both in agreement that course history is a pretty strong factor this week. An angle we both locked to take this week. How about that?
All right.
Let's dive into the slate, man.
All right.
10K and up. We usually go 10K and up. Only got got one golfer this week above 11,000. That's Patrick Cantlay at 11.2. Will Zalatoris, who we spent a lot of time talking about at 10.8. We got Daniel Berger, the defending champ. Jordan Spieth, great course history. So I think it's fair to call this field a little bit thin. Eric, we've got a lot of kind of the elite players over in Saudi are just not playing this week. So really kind of a thin salary scale this week, certainly top heavy. Give me your thoughts up here at the top, man. Are you going to be going up here? And if so, who are you looking at?
Absolutely. Again, with the buckets, we look at salaries. So I'm projecting somewhere between 1 to 3 inside the top 10. That means I'm going to play one in every single one of my lineups. I'm a unique lineup creator. So like I'll create 100 unique lineups. I don't, just create one or, single entry, anything like that. But I would just recommend or suggest do play a 10K golfer. And my 10K that I'm probably going to lean heavy on is going to be Cantlay. I just don't see how I get away from Cantlay.
Yeah, he's certainly the class of this field. He's the only player teeing it up this week that's ranked inside the OWGR top 10. Had a T3 here last year. Obviously played amazing down the stretch in 2021, won the FedEx Cup, and come out and played really well in his 2 starts this year. Had a 4th over at the Century Tournament Champions, top 10 at the Amex. So there's a lot to like about Cantlay. I agree with you, man. It's shaping up as a stars and scrubs build type of week. We saw that kind of approach be very popular and very effective a couple weeks ago at the Amex. In that specific tournament, we saw a lot of guys stacking Patrick Cantlay and John Rahm together.
Yeah.
So I think that's something you can look at this week. You maybe don't have to go with 2 10K guys, but I think you might want to, certainly look at either going 3 guys in the 9Ks or maybe going to Cantlay and dipping down, high 9s or another 10K plus player. I think you can do that this week. It's on the table just because the mid-range is so weak. I like Cantlay a lot. So I'm with you there. Daniel Berger's the defending champion. He's just so consistent. This price tag's a little tough, but in this field, we should have expected him to be up above 10K. So no huge surprise there. Great course history. We talked about, how we're factoring that in this week. He's played this event 3 times. He's got a T10, a T5, and a win. So Berger's course history is great, and he's a consistent player. Willie Z, we spent a lot of time talking about. I don't know that this is the greatest fit for him. He's made a couple cuts here in 2 starts, but, nothing that kind of makes you say, I got to get Willie Z in my lineup this week. I think that's more just a talent and a form thing. If you want to fire with him rather than course history, kind of mutes a little bit of his advantage, which is his distance off the tee, I feel like. And then Jordan Spieth, just to kind of round out the 10Ks. Great course history here, former winner here, and we've seen him kind of always get his year kick started in this event. It seems like this is usually where he kind of breaks out. Usually we'll play 1 or 2 events before this one, but this seems to be kind of a kicking off point for him. Hadn't played well this year to this point, but we've seen him play well here even when his form is terrible. So, I think they're all viable this week, and I think you can maybe even look at getting 2 of these guys in your lineups. Let's move down the 9s, man. A lot of course history, a lot of guys we saw in action last week. Jason Day played really well. Maverick McNeely, a lot of people will be talking about him this week. Justin Rose, another veteran, kind of in that Jason Day mold, played well last week at Farmers and has played well here. We've got a couple guys that are having, strong seasons or had strong 2021s, and Cameron Tringali and Seamus Powers. Kevin Strillman, course history beast here. And then Kevin Kisner, kind of one of those shorter hitters we touched on. What are you thinking in the 9Ks, Eric?
In all honesty, this is the hardest range to choose a golfer from. A lot of them rate out really well. That trend I was telling you about, I've updated my projections. It's like you want 2 to 4 golfers that have last year finish a 20 or better, and you have 4 of those golfers here. Kevin Streelman's one, Cameron Tringali is another, McNeely is another, and Jay Day is another. You also have 3 in the 10K range, and all of those things can happen. They can, we can have a mix and match of top 10s. For me, it's My favorite that I lean to is Cameron Tringali. But honestly, Joe, I love everybody except Fitzpatrick. I'm not nothing against Fitzpatrick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm kind of one of those that I need to see his game in order
Mm-hmm.
to feel comfortable in rostering him. So if you want to play the game theory angle, which I don't do that. Fitzpatrick is probably going to be a good player because I don't know how owned he's going to be, amongst everyone else. But if I'm going to rate him out, Tringali's 1, McNeely's 2, Day's 3. Oh my God, I can't even do this because I like Power a lot.
Yeah.
So Day and Power probably around that 3, and then I'm going to go Rose after that. Unless I already said Rose, and it's McNeely.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I really like this range. I think you can kind of camp out here this week. We talked about stars and scrub top build. I think you can go 3 guys from the 9Ks, and I mean, you can, depending on who you go, you're looking at, low 7K, right at 7K in average salary left for your 3 remaining spots. And, I think it's a viable line to take this week, with what's in the rest of the salary scale as we work our way down. Certainly like this 9K range, like going heavy on it this week. So I'm with you. And Fitz is probably my least favorite as well there.
So he's gonna win this event, right?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably. Shout out Spencer, my boy Spencer Aguiar. Jason Day made a deep run last week, brother. T3 at the Farmers, and his course history here is amazing. He's been a beast in this event, so I think Day will get a lot of pub. Maverick McNeely as well, Jay Rose. All these guys are going to be fairly popular, I feel, but it's with reason, as they're good plays. Let's work down in the 8Ks, man. Ryan Palmer, player played well last week, hadn't played great in this event. This is kind of where it starts getting a little bit thin. Lanto, Christian Bezadenhout, Brian Harmon, Tom Hoagie, Mackenzie Hughes, Mito, Denny McCarthy, Charlie Hoffman, and Matt Jones. Who's sticking out to you here, man? Some solid players in here. I don't know that we have the combination of form and course history that we saw in the 9K range, but give me your thoughts on the 8s.
Sure. I mean, I have nothing against Palmer. I think Palmer has kind of proven to be an extremely consistent golfer recently, whereas before he was very volatile. So I think you're getting safe value with Ryan Palmer at 8,900. I don't know if that's a sexy enough play. Like, I really like Tom Hoagie. I really like Mito Pereira at 8,300. He kind of glues a lot of the lineup builds that I'm doing. I also like Charlie Hoffman rates out really well for me, but his withdrawals over the last 2 events, I don't know what to do with that. So, yeah. I mean, I'll build lineups with Hoffman in it and just wait to see if he, withdraws. But yeah, I really don't extremely like the 8K range. And especially, if you're going to me, I'm going to roster like a 10K and a 9K, and it's really difficult to put an 8K golfer in there. And if there is, like I said, the glue is Mito Pereira. So I don't like Lanto at 8,800. I don't like Bezadenhout at 8,700. Harmon rates out well for me. So yeah, to me, it's Mito probably above all. And then it's Hoagie. I want to see what's up with Hoffman. And then that's it, man. I mean, I don't think I'm going to touch Palmer because he's just kind of in a dead zone for pricing for me.
Yeah. It's a tough pricing zone. I think the Bills kind of lend themselves to staying out of this range for the most part this week. You mentioned Mito. I mean, I think there's a couple guys you might want to dip in here for, but there's no real appointment plays in here, if you want to call them that. I don't think there's any guys in here that you feel like you have to play. Ron Palmer's a guy for me, kind of falls similar to Will Zalatoris, kind of falls in that category for me, in that I don't know that his game's a great fit here. Whereas they were both excellent plays and excellent fits last week. They kind of both fall out of being great fits this week for me. So I think you can certainly play Ron Palmer, but much preferred him last week. Yeah. And as you mentioned, man, none of these other guys really blow me away. I think Mito's a really talented young player. You can certainly look at him, but he's making his course debut. We talked about how that kind of works against guys a little bit, but if anyone can overcome it, it's him. A lot of talent there from tee to green. So like Mito. So I think it's pretty safe to say we're neither one of us crazy about the 8K range. Let's drop down to the sevens, man. Always a ton of guys to get through in the 7K range, it feels like, and that's again the case this week. Couple guys that stick out for me: Russell Knox. He's always tough to rely on, but there's some good course history here. We seen a nice outing a few weeks ago with the Sony. So I think you can certainly look at Russell Knox. And then we got kind of these vanilla guys, these veterans, Matt Kuchar and Andrew Putnam. Patrick Rogers is a West Coast guy. Brent Snedeker disappointed me last week. I was kind of a little higher on his chances at the Farmers. After a good showing at Sony and Amex, he disappointed, but this might be a neat little bounce back spot for Brent Snedeker, who's a two-time winner of this event. Nick Taylor, former winner of this event, to kind of stay on the course history angle. And as you work your way down, it kind of really runs out, man. Maybe more so than we've seen in a while. But give me your thoughts on the 7Ks. What do you feel about this range as a whole? And are there any guys that are jumping out for you specifically?
So let me say something about this 7K range. DraftKings over the last 3 weeks has added 10 more 7K golfers than it does on average. They usually have around 30 golfers in the 7K range. So I think they're trying something new.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because I've been wondering if I'm like taking crazy pills or something like with all these guys in the 7K range.
So I track salaries in the bucket system, and like, you know what? I guess at this tournament we've had around 43. So maybe it's just this time of the year. I guess, but in all honesty, the last couple tournaments we've had about 10 more, because there's usually somewhere between 30 to 35 7K golfers, and then you have like somewhere between 70 and 96K golfers. And it's like we have more than that. I guess. Yeah. So anyways, I'm sorry. With the 7K range, I'm with you, man. It is so hard to throw a dart at any of these 7K golfers, because I could make cases for every single one of them, and I can make cases against every single one of them. You've got a lot of young guys who are playing here for the first time, you know, like Grayson Sigg, Taylor Moore, Aaron Rye, who played really well last week. Like, those are really good golfers. Taylor Pendrith is a good golfer. Hayden Buckley is a good golfer. Like, with the young guns, I mean, I don't know. Do you go like 10-9 and then 4 7K golfers and just mix and match in here? Like, that's kind of what I'm kind of leaning towards, if I'm being honest, because the 6K range, once we get there, is kind of pitiful.
Yeah.
And like I said, you can make so many cases for these 7K golfers. So unfortunately, Joe, I don't have anything really helpful to add to the 7K range, because
it's a tough range, man. And it's really puts me to mind of the Amex a couple weeks ago, where you feel like you're almost, you know, there's a handful of guys that you really lock up at the top. You maybe want to try to find a way to lock those guys in, and then as you just said, mix and match throughout the 7K range. Because if you do go like kind of ultra stars and scrubs, lock in 2 guys up top, that almost puts you right down in the 6s. So what you were saying, maybe one high priced option, mix and match in the 7s. I think that's something you can look at this week. There are guys we can play in here, quality players, but as you mentioned, very few without some question marks, either with form or making a course debut. So, there's a lot of guys we like to play, but maybe aren't a great fit this week. And these rookies, man, I'm telling you, they're making an impact faster than ever before on the PGA tours. There's some really quality KFT grads, but this is a tough course for guys making their debut. So that's something we'll have to weigh before we decide to pull the trigger on any of these guys. But I think you can. I think you can look at them this week. You mentioned the 6Ks are really weak. I would agree with that. There are a few guys down here that I'm willing to look at as of now. I usually kind of dial that lower end range as the week progresses, and hope that I'll get some clarity on maybe a couple guys. And that's where I am this week. Anybody sticking out down there to you, Eric?
No, I will have a salary pot out there that basically tells you in most of your GPP winning lineups you want a 6K golfer. Like I think it's overwhelmingly like 75% of GPP winning lineups have a 6K golfer in it. So I always am trying to find the correct 6K golfer, and I won't lie, I watered down my ownership because it's extremely foolish trying to figure out which 6K golfer you should pick. Like there's a reason they're here. There's like the outcomes
Yeah.
are so volatile with these
Yeah.
guys down here.
Just inherent volatility down here for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's all built into their price tag. I'll give you some names just to give names, like people that I think have a lot of potential, at least to score well at this event. I really like, oh God, I'm looking at all these names. I'm like, I like all of them. But Adam Svensson rates out pretty well in the 6K range. He's my second rated guy. Kevin Tway is actually number 1, but I don't necessarily care for Kevin Tway. I really like Trey Mullinax. Like he probably has the best course history out of everybody down here in the 6K range. It's pretty close. Kurt Kitayama, I think, has better, but he only has one event under his belt. I kind of like Mullinax, if I'm being honest. Like he's going to be out of the, I don't think a lot of people are going to be on him, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they also see his course history, but he's somebody that I think almost won the Valero Texas Open a while ago, or maybe the Byron Nelson, but he yipped his chip and then put it in the bunker or something like that. He's got potential. That's all I'm saying. I think the 6K range, you probably just want to rate based off of potential. You don't want to be safe in the 6K range if you're going to pick a golfer down here.
Yeah, I mean, if you're anytime I want to dip down in the 6Ks, it's purely on the consideration of upside.
Yeah.
I'm never dipping down there in search of a consistent player. I just kind of want to find somebody that, has the upside and the ability to kind of score random top 10 for you. And we've seen that on this golf course before. We've seen guys kind of pop up out of nowhere. A Ted Potter Jr. a few years ago. We've seen Nick Taylor, which, I wouldn't put those two guys in the same category, but, we've seen some kind of long shot winners in this event. So, I think you can look down here a little bit, try to find who that guy's going to be this year. You mentioned a couple guys. I'll toss a couple out. Nick Hardy's a young player that I like, that I'll consider a little bit this week. Pete Malnati, we talk about him quite a bit on the show. He's from our area, but he's got a couple nice finishes on this course and played well last week. He's a streaky player. He had a T11 here in 2020. So I think you can give Peter Malnati a look. But I'm with you. You're really kind of throwing darts down here, and it runs out pretty quickly. So it's really tough, man. This is a tough event. It's really hard to kind of put a beat on. I've talked a lot about it's kind of like the Amex, not only from the format, but just kind of the strength of the field. And we saw, Hudson Swafford come out of kind of nowhere and win the Amex. So, anything can happen this week. Just one of those where you're kind of hoping when you dip down below the 7K range. But speaking of darts, man, I don't know how familiar you are with the show, Eric, but we do a little segment to close things out called the Hearts and Darts segment. I need a heart play. That's who you like the best this week, no matter price. Your favorite play, and I need a dart play. Who you going off the board, kind of throwing your dart with this week? Give me your dart play first, man.
I mean, there's no one I feel more confident in playing than Patrick Cantlay. I think he's underrated, which is crazy to say. I know, the Pat Mayos of the world and stuff like that, they just used to criticize his bunker game. And it's like, he hit one bad bunker shot. And that's what we're saying about him. Like, the guy is so consistent, and he has been his whole career. I think he's more comfortable being on tour. He's not really battling his back injuries. So it's Cantlay for me. Like, I just can't not play Cantlay.
All right. So Patrick Cantlay is your heart play. Who's your dart play, man? Who's your kind of kind of guy you're gambling on, guy that maybe not a lot of people will be rostering this week? Who's kind of sticking out to you as a dart play?
So is this where we like try to go as off the deep end as possible?
Yeah, you can get nuts with this one, man.
Oh man. I mean, I think I've already talked. Well, Curtis Thompson, $6,500. I didn't want to roster him at the Farmers. And I know he got a 67th place finish, but he was, I think, atop the leaderboard for a while. I remember just looking at him going, oh, son of a gun. Like, I needed to fill in a low 6K in some of my lineups. And I mean, the guy is, it's a dart play. Let's just put it that way, Joe. Do I have a lot of confidence in it? No, not really. But he's going to be the glue on some of my stars and scrubs lineups. And I don't think I'm going any lower than 6,500. I don't think I'm going.
I like it, man. That's the definition of the dart play. So perfect. You did great. My dart, I'll throw out a homer pick. Scott Stallings, 7,100.
Okay.
Played really well at this golf course. Always seems to turn on the West Coast. So I'm going Scott Stallings, kind of our homeboy here on the Turn Fantasy Golf Pod. My heart, man, you're right. It's really, really tough to go against Cantlay. But just to be different, I'll toss out Jordan Spieth, guy that we hadn't really heard much from this year, but always seems to get it going here. Certainly did last year. Almost won this event last year. So kind of look for a big splash from Jordan Spieth this week.
I like that. So last year, the narrative coming into this was the golf course is so wide open that someone like Spieth, who sprays the golf ball off the tee, this would be okay because he's, a wizard around the green. Like his escape shots are probably better than most, probably some of the best, honestly.
Yeah.
And even if Spieth hits it in the rough I don't think is that penal. So I think that's what attributed to his success last year. So I think, for you to feel comfortable with that pick, like he's coming in with kind of the same form, that we kind of thought of him, like what he's coming in this year that he was last year. So I like Jordan Spieth.
Yeah, he doesn't really ever come into this event with great form. He had a breakout last week. The schedule was a little different. I think Phoenix was actually before this event. I'm sure you remember he had that breakout week in Phoenix. So he had a lot of hype coming in.
But he also sprayed the ball there too.
Yeah. I think it's where you're clubbing down off the tee a lot. He's not forced to hit driver a ton here, which helps. And then I don't even know if we mentioned, man, Pebble Beach these are pretty much the smallest greens that we'll see on the schedule this year. So, Spieth played really well here. Jason Day's played really well here. Justin Rose played. Brent Snedeker. Guys that are really good around the green with really good short games because, these greens are so tiny, you're going to miss them. So I just like Spieth. I don't know that he'll get the hype that he got last year coming in this week. So I'm going to keep an eye on his ownership. Look for a breakout spot from him this week.
I like it.
Yeah. But we're going to close things out. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at The Turn Golf Pod. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify. We appreciate it. It really helps us. Drop a thumbs up. Give us a good rating on there. That helps. And I really want to thank you, Eric, for joining us. Hope everybody checks your YouTube channel out, SweetSpotDFS. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week on the Turn Fantasy Golf Pod.
Thanks, Joe.
It's gone.